I who thought the internet was a big
It's
truck.
it's not a big truck. It's a series of tubes. I'm gonna search that and figure out who was it. It was not Al Gore. Ladies and gentlemen, we're live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 10 of whatever the fuck I'm calling this. I have no idea. And now with my American brother from another mother, Andrew Tyler.
Oh, yeah.
Andrew, I fucking love you, dude. And unlike other Americans I talk to, this one was actually here. I
Yeah.
gave him some hardcore Egyptian foreign policy, Middle East shit in his mind in the beginning. Remember in the beginning, we don't want to be imperialists. That was like
I feel like this is a good crash course for anybody who
yeah.
went from
People-
hardcore leftist 4-year college directly to being a backpacker doing nothing. Just go to Egypt, stay with Omar.
Without me, you could have been right now anti-fascista communist. See, I made an impression.
I have a bandana. I mean, you don't know what I use it for.
No one knows. Like that's why you're busy. Like from fighting free speech on liberal campus and after campus, you with Antifa. Yeah. Punching.
Non-stop.
Dude, it's not smashing Nazis. It's punching Nazis and smash fash. Learn your fucking Antifa, dude. You don't smash fash. Didn't you see the videos? Smash fash.
I think 5 years ago it was Smash the State, so I guess maybe they've updated it now. I don't know.
By the way, if we're gonna talk 5 years ago, everything was different and on the other side. Seriously, free speech is a conservative issue now, Andrew? The right wing have free speech now? So what the fuck happened? Now the free speech heroes are conservatives? Well, fucking great.
I wonder, this is a total tangent. I have no intelligent basis for wondering this, but I do wonder how much of it is just like the internet. So now we're not having debates over like what's appropriate for children to see on TV. Apparently we've just decided, fuck it.
Yeah. Back in the
no
day,
one cares anymore.
Hardcore gaming and entertainment is ruining our children, and now just done. And okay. Two statements about this. We're getting into economics, of course. But first of all, how can there be quote unquote free speech heroes in a country that already has free speech and everyone can say whatever the fuck they want? Why are these conservative heroes? That's question number one. Question number two, if these are like they're heroes because basically they did nothing, they just said some shit, and suddenly because of turning them away or turning them off from the left, suddenly they became heroes. Let me tell you something. There are like women in Iran making a statement by taking off the hijab under the hashtag "My Still See Freedom" and getting thrown in prisons. Raif Badawi in Saudi Arabia is getting lashed 50 times a day, and because someone said boobs, he's a free speech hero? What's going on?
I knew. What is the guy that you're talking about who just said boobs?
Play something. Didn't you see the video of you're in America and you don't know and I know? Jesus. Be an American. Boobs.
I live in Seattle. I do my best to stay in a bubble. If it doesn't involve anyone I like already, I don't hear about it.
Like a true liberal, dude. Good for you. Okay, there was a guy on CNN from some sports podcast something, and he told her there is only two things I believe in this country: the First Amendment and boobs.
Aha!
And they turned him off, and he became a hero. And of course, listen, by the way, Andrew, I'm not blaming those idiot conservatives on becoming heroes. I'm blaming the left for just not ignoring them in the first place. For the millionth time, people who say stupid shit, who do not have major power to hurt anyone, should be ignored or made fun of. Why the fuck should we even protest against them or must cancel free speech? Free speech rally now next week is all conservatives? That's a free speech, because the left keeps turning. Imagine a world where Milo was ignored, where whatever the fuck other conservatives were ignored. He wouldn't be anything. Like, it's falling into the trap. Remember, before Berkeley, Milo was on Joe Rogan. He literally said, I am intending for there to be violent protests so that I would use that against him. He stated his plan when he was drunk. Exactly.
Yep.
And they fell into the plan exactly. That shit is insane. So of course, so Andrew, free speech is a conservative now. Talk about that before economics. If anything about anything I said.
How free speech? Well, I'm trying to answer your initial question of how can there be free speech heroes in a country where there is free speech.
Yeah.
And I guess what's interesting for me as somebody who is much more sympathetic to the Antifa people than you are, I guess, is that there's this obvious tension between I don't really give a shit if you say boobs on CNN, and I will happily ignore that. But when you have people who show up as protesters on, say, a college campus like where I'm at, and you probably know the Milo protest that happened at University. Yeah, and there was a shooting and so on. And, that was one of the shittiest moments in politics I've ever seen firsthand. I mean, you had, on the one side, you had your hardcore Antifa who are in the crowd, who are blocking everybody and throwing rocks at pretty much anyone who they don't like. And then you have people who are legitimately just conservative, from a wide range of ethnicities who wanted to see Milo. And then you have people who are literally wearing swastikas and, trying as hard as they can and look like a Nazi.
Exactly. But do the general people around Berkeley know that they're cosplaying Nazis to piss them off, or they think they're actual nationalist socialists from the past?
Well, they're actual. I mean, there's probably more National Socialists from the past in the U.S. than there are ISIS members. And they do stuff
there's no ISIS. I know. No, that's
not
my. But there's a huge. Andrew, trust me. There's a huge part of 4chan that has nothing to do with anything except let's piss off the left as much as possible by saying exactly what pisses them off. And it's so easy. I can piss you off right now and make you go crazy. I know exactly what to say. How is that? How does advertising your weakness is a good strategy?
Yeah, it's an awful strategy. You've pointed out. I don't know what to tell you what the best course of action is, right? Because you don't want to allow legitimately dangerous people on your campus. And how do you know the difference between somebody who's just pretending to be that for being an asshole, someone who actually is? I don't know. I mean, what if there was people imitating the Muslim Brotherhood and they were doing it to piss off, I don't know, Jews in Israel or something? We would probably say, hey, maybe they shouldn't be there.
I love your knowledge about, I don't know, maybe Jews. Who the fuck knows?
Toss them out there. I was going to say people in Cairo, but I feel like that's a whole other conversation I don't want to have. This.
Yeah, you have 3 hours for me to explain it again, by the way, because I hit you in your ear. Fuck you. Dude, I understand what you're saying. There's only one point I'm going to say about this before we move on.
Okay.
When you said legitimately dangerous, that means provocation or calling for violence. That's already under the law to just get them caught. And they know exactly not to do that. They're playing the game of, I'm just stating this opinion. Fuck feminism, fuck. They're specifically going for non-violent but provocative, insulting shit for that reason, so that they won't get arrested. My point is not simply anti-Antifa protecting Milo's free speech. My point is, if he has a plan and he's saying it, the best way to fight him is to go against his plan. I thought it was basic. Sorry. My bad.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious in hindsight of the case of somebody like Milo, but I don't know. And I will say, I met a lot of people on the left who were... Yeah, and just random douchebags who show up. And I mean, many of these people probably are recently released from prison or have a mental illness. It's where a lot of this hardcore white power stuff takes off, but they're still there. Yeah, I mean, they have a huge presence in prisons, and there's, I don't know, around 30 or 40 million people with a criminal record in the U.S. That's a lot of people.
Exactly, but people who were in prison, people like this, the second they do anything remotely violent, they will get arrested, right? Or the police is not siding with white supremacists here. That's the point I was making. Whatever the actual bad people have already a whole thing under the law done. We don't. It's not your job to even why first of all, why are these people existing in a debate to begin with? I understand that point. Like, why are they here?
Well, yeah, that is a really long, complicated historical answer, but they've been around for a long time, and they get attached.
No. I know the historical. Dude, come on. I don't know America. I know the thing. I know the shit about CNN and boobs, and you don't know. Okay, just to be clear, you're here because of economics, not because of politics. I know politics more than you. I know fucking American politics more than you.
So I wasn't aware CNN and boobs as part of the history of white supremacy.
Yeah. and when you second last thing before we go to economics, when you said 5 years ago, everything was so reversed to the point that when I go through like some extreme left activists videos from 5-6 years ago, first of all, it was the Occupy Wall Street days, and they were saying crooked Hillary with money, Hillary's corrupt. What the fuck is going on? Like,
I think you might be over homogenizing a lot of people on the left.
No.
There's a lot of people. I mean, I know a lot of people on the left who said that all throughout the campaign as well, and those would be the people who are way more likely to dress in all black and wear a bandana.
Yeah. I'm talking about okay, that channel had a video that was attacking Alex Jones for fear mongering. Listen, just listen. For fear mongering.
Whenever someone says Alex Jones,
dude, I watch Alex Jones all the time because it's fucking hilarious. He had this awesome rant. He had this awesome rant that I must link to you. And you want me to quote that rant out of context? I want to quote one quote. What is Hitler? What is Stalin? What is Mao? What is Venezuela? That was an actual quote.
I think my favorite quote of his is just like, "Hey, look, man, I'm like an eye or maybe a tooth." Like, well, I don't know.
By the way, the gay frogs sing. No. That's the insane part, Andrew. That's the insane part. There is chemicals that turns the frogs gay. It's real. That one was actually real.
Or something like that. Like,
yeah, it's
not part of the homosexual agenda. Like,
no, it's not part of the homosexual agenda. I'm telling you, there was an actual thing that he ran from to insane land that was actually real, that had to do with like Jurassic Park shit when reptiles change sexes. You know that thing, and the chemicals affect them. It's simple science, but he took that to the homosexual agenda. So I was saying, I remember. So so people on the left, I'm not painting on a big brush, of course. You know me, I specific. Right. So these people on the left, were attacking Alex Jones for fear mongering and making up shit that just to make people afraid. Guess what Alex Jones was making up in that video? He was saying, watch out for the rise of Nazism in America. Exactly. So once you say we're going to go back 6 years, just forget everything you know from 2016 and 2017. Like, everything was... And that, to me, from someone outside of America totally, just shows how much the politicians are just hypocrites. They're using every single issue. Whatever, I'm criticizing both parties here. Both parties. Every single issue is used as a political attack, not something they believe in. They believe in executive orders are awesome when Obama, bad when Trump. Whatever this is awesome when immigration was bad when... Who believes in what? Name me one principle that is the same. It's nothing. It's keep shifting on. Dude, it's reaction.
It's a systemic problem. I mean, I think you saw it really profoundly with the Tea Party, especially. It's kind of like you probably find politicians who have been here long enough that they want to be more principled, and that their voting record probably demonstrates that, but they have to release these ridiculous statements, or they'll get voted out by their own base. It's
yeah, that whole our own base currently believes in X, therefore we're pro X.
Yeah,
who's
like
standing
X
up for
currently
anything
popular?
That's right?
So we have to, just hope that X is right.
But what is your entire party's main point in real economic issues, foreign policy issues, is why? Shouldn't you forget about X? Maybe? Just me?
I fucking hope so.
Yeah, fucking hope so. And at least, okay, one last political question. People are people around you on the left are fucking already sick of Hillary and establishment Democrats, or still there is still the main establishment Democrats reveal, or we're still with her hashtag. I'm still with her.
So I think people around me on the left, you could broadly put into two buckets here. Like, there are people who are on the quote unquote radical left, and the Democratic Party has never been good enough for them. And because they provided bailouts to the banks in 2008, it's unforgivable.
You're talking progressives, or you're talking Antifa?
Oh, neither, but closer to Antifa. These are people who would identify with one of many socialist parties, or would be like a Bernie Crat kind of person.
Bernie Bros.
Yeah. And so they are not remotely on board with Hillary or any establishment Democrats.
But they voted Hillary, and now they're fucking done.
Well,
right?
Again, no, because in Washington State was almost guaranteed to go for Hillary.
So Washington State.
So most of them voted green. But yeah, their contemporaries in a swing state would have voted Hillary.
Jill Stein,
seriously? And then on the other flip side, oh my God, yeah, I think we got us almost 1 or 2% of the vote for Jill Stein here in Washington State.
Good for you, green guys.
Woo! Crystals are legitimate energy. I have no idea.
Okay, sorry.
I said that. I just saw it on a meme once. And the rest of the people.
We all know the sound bites, like Jill Stein, that stupid crystal set, and RT Russians, and what is Aleppo on the libertarian side. That's about it.
Right. Yeah, I think and then there's still some progressive Democrats who I think are more, I don't know, backpedaling for Hillary. I don't want to call them apologists. Probably never thought there was anything wrong with Hillary in the first place, but people who are sort of defending her still. But no one, it seems, to expect her to run or really wants to talk about her.
We can go.
Did you hear her recent?
Dude, I heard her recent. Let's blame all of this list.
Exactly. Her and
first of all,
damn it,
she blamed. But listen, she blamed a lot of not only the basics like Russia intervention and Comey. Like, she started Bernie, Obama, Biden. Let's bring on all the shit. And okay, here's the part that really pissed me off. Like, egotistical narcissist 101. What do you think? He was asking, what do you think of she was saying women came to me and was apologizing because they didn't vote and they should have, and they asked for absolution. Okay, so listen, it gets worse. And no absolution for you. You should have voted. Who is this God speaking now? What is this absolution? What? That was so fucking weird. Like, she was saying, no, your apology not accepted. You should have voted instead of going in the women's march with your pussy hats. She's blaming female voters for her loss. How far can you get in the blame game until you reach female liberals? Like, how the hell did the blame game went from Russia all the way to female liberals? How is this even possible? And when I ask you, are people done with Hillary? They're still apologists, or what the fuck?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not going out taking systematic surveys here, but just in terms of things I hear in my career, there are plenty of people who say things like she got a bad rap.
Aww.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong here.
She was just too awkward. I do think we should go on to economics here, but I think the seismic question is actually more interesting than we give it credit for. I don't know how much that really contributed to anything, but to hear the criticisms on both sides that describe her in these very personal ways, I thought was kind of enlightening.
For example,
shrill and stuff like that.
Dude, my problems with Hillary and Obama administration totally is into foreign policy about the Middle East. It has nothing to do with who they are. Like, don't give me black, don't give me woman. If there's robots doing the same thing, I am against them and criticize them. Like, I have nothing to do with it. But my criticism, by the way, like that confuses some American liberals, because they always throw me as right-wing, pro-Trump. And in the primaries, people here, like in the primaries, let's make Bernie win to get rid of Hillary. Okay, let's Trump win to get rid of Hillary. Like, there's a whole Hillary's foreign policy, hawkish foreign policy in the Middle East. That's about it. Nothing to do with anything else. So, anyways.
I just don't know. The yield, yep. Okay. Yeah, all right. Let's go. Let's move on. I have nothing inside.
We need to forget about Hillary. What happened? Question mark. The answer is in the same front. Hillary, Rodham, Clinton. That's all we need to know. That's what happened. Dude, what the fuck is Wall Street?
What is Wall Street? Have you not seen Wolf of Wall Street? It's Leonardo DiCaprio.
No, not
cocaine off prostitutes. It's what this nation is built on.
What this nation is built on, it represents capitalism, or it represents a bunch of people making claims on parts of companies. Like
it represents prostitutions and cocaine.
Hookers and blow. Prostitution.
Kind of like institutions.
Here. Non-English words and okay. Serious.
Okay.
There's three things I want to know about from you. First of all, the 2008 thing, and what exactly happened, and how was the banks too big to fail? If it was a capitalistic free market system, like failing is good. Like they fucked up, they failed. Basically, am I understanding that right? Like capitalism, if you fuck up, you fail. Good.
No, not when it comes to banks necessarily. I mean, the idea that banks...
Go ahead and explain all the shit about too big to fail.
All right, well, I'm going to give about a 4.5-hour lecture here, and I have no notes prepared. But the Spark Notes version of this, right? So the reason for in the first response, going backwards here, the reason that competition between these large banks, or at least failure of these banks, wouldn't be a good thing is because they would cause such a dent in terms of the money that they've lent out. They would result in a lot of other businesses failing. So it's not a standard sort of competition where the worst business goes out of business. It would be a case where a large bank would result in defaults on a huge amount of loans, and a lot of people would lose their savings, and the ripple effects, for lack of a better term, in the economy would be devastating. And it actually... until I want to say the 90s, you wouldn't have had banks this size anyway. Following from the Great Depression is where a lot of these regulations were put in place to try to prevent exactly the creation of banks this large, and thus in the event that if one of them did fail, you wouldn't have these consequences.
Stupid question number one.
Go for it.
If they're that important, they can do whatever the fuck they want, no matter the law, no matter whatever. Just he'll do whatever. We're always gonna be on top. Done. How is that not possible?
I don't know that they're that important. What exactly do you mean?
I mean, when you say they're too important, there's mortgages, there's people depending on them, there is. If that's the argument, then those banks can play dirty and do whatever the fuck they want, right? Because they always know. Oh yeah, that's already
going to bail them out.
Because someone that's the fact we have to live with now. Like that's normal business.
Yeah, I mean Yanis Varoufakis, the former finance minister of Greece, or I think it's finance, whatever. Important Greek economic. You know Yanis. Yeah, okay. So he would argue that was a recent book that he put out, was all about how we're living under a new economic system where we're governed by these huge banks. And that's not totally true, because they still took major losses from doing this. There's new regulations put in place that's supposed to prevent some of this. I was listening to a London School of Economics lecture a couple of days ago, and they seem to think these new regulations are really changing things. It depends on who you talk to, right?
Yeah.
Critics on the far left or far right tend to be way more willing to say we live in a system where we're dominated by these huge banks. People in the middle are optimistic but skeptical about new regulations.
Two stupid questions. Why didn't some banks fail and we moved everything critical from those banks to other banks that are working and safe and did nothing wrong?
Yeah, so some banks did fail. I want to say, I can't remember the biggest. Washington Mutual.
Then I have bad information. Yeah. I thought everyone got scot-free. Nothing happened.
Well, we bailed out some of the largest ones, but like a bank like Washington Mutual went under. Now, they may have moved securities around, so the effects were small. I don't remember. But, I mean, generally when a bank fails, they fail because they don't have the money that they've lent out, and so now they're defaulting on loans. So you wouldn't be able to move money to another bank because that money doesn't exist.
But that money, but to save it, it would take from the government. So the government shouldn't give them that money. Give to another bank with everyone associated with the first bank. Am I making sense?
So you're saying rather than give it to the bank that failed, give it to one that hasn't failed yet, and just move all those people over there.
The shitty bank would fail. I'm trying to figure out a scenario where a bank that made mistakes would fail, basically. Even if it's
and wouldn't be a necessarily too big to fail kind of situations that we're talking about.
Even if it's big, if we're gonna bail out someone, let's bail out someone else with all of that bank stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Does that, I don't know. That money that would bail out a corrupt bank should go to solving the things that corrupt bank is critical for and needed for the people at the first place.
Sure.
That doesn't make sense economically because I don't know shit about.
It might. I doubt it. The sort of obvious knee-jerk reactions I have are like, I think there's probably serious technical barriers to this. Like, how do you reach the correct people and have the yeah. Well, on top of that, yeah. But I think the more worrisome aspect.
Sorry, you're talking to someone like who had Nasser as the president at one day. Like, he doesn't care about legal. Oh, that American company and that French company, they're now Egyptian. Done. Let's see.
Excellent.
I'm gonna tell you about this for 2 minutes because everyone is saying socialist about Nasser, and Nasser wasn't really socialist. His main thing was pan-Arabism and other things. But his thing was there's a foreign free market going around. Let's nationalize that. Let's make that public and government. If there is an Egyptian free market, good. Capitalism is good. How does that like? That's not even definable as a word. Like, he's not a socialist. But okay, there's a French company making money from Suez Canal. Let's take it. Done. Yeah. It's Egyptian and it's public. But there was Egyptian private companies making money from the high dam. Leave them. No problem.
Oh,
define in economic terms that attitude. Is it national economic nationalism?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what you would want to call it. It was it was all over the place in the 70s and the 60s. It was a very common thing. And then it became, obviously, the reason for COINTEL breakdowns and stuff like that. You saw the CIA in Iran. You saw it in Central America.
Let's start.
Sort of the heyday of our efficacy in foreign policy, right?
Yeah, it's here. Your 70s, 80s CIA programs are fucking awesome, dude.
Wait, okay, so
awesome.
going back to your question about I think that the larger concern would be that these practices were endemic, at least in 2008. So even if you bailed out another bank, to be competitive, that bank probably had to do the same sort of risky trading the previous bank did.
As in, you're saying all the banks suck? Like, in 2008, everything was shitty.
I'm saying it sounds like it became a systemic problem where in order to compete as a bank, you had to engage in behaviors like this or comparable in some other way. Otherwise, the other banks would offer a better deal because, they could do that because they were lying. It's amazing how much better you could be if you just lie about yourself. This is how I've gotten every job in my life.
Yeah. CV. I was going to ask,
I have 10 years of experience. Huh?
Yeah, of course. I'm a fresh graduate and have 10 years of experience, both.
At the same time. It's amazing.
It's amazing. I was working since I was 12. Systemic the system and the entire bank and the whole thing is fucked in the first place. It's not this actually shifts the blame from certain corrupt banks. It's the system. You're saying that?
Yeah, that would.
I don't understand shit, by the way. Just to be clear, ladies and gentlemen, I don't understand shit about economics. And when Andrew was here in my apartment, I told him the same. And I said I know more than you about geopolitics all over the world, but economics I fail every single time. I'm gonna ask basic stupid questions to the point that just to move a step forward. So
next time we do this, I'm gonna pick out some readings. But yes, I mean system-wide would be
Okay, before we leave 2008, what did the Occupy Wall Street movement actually want? What are their demands?
Oh, it's funny. I was in an Occupy Wall Street camp in 2010 or whatever.
You were Occupy Wall Street?
Yeah. I was in a Washington one. That was my first activism exposure.
Here is Andrew fighting the 1%. Fighting the 1%.
You're welcome. And I can't even recall. I want to say that at one point there was a pretty explicit list of demands, but you know, the Occupy Wall Street movement was they were going to have no leader, and it was going to be this decentralized movement throughout the United States. And there was some supposedly nationalist that included things like the reinstating of Dodd-Frank, which is a financial protection act that would have limited bank sizes. There was something I want to say about raising the minimum wage. In general, things intended to combat
minimum wage. Did you say minimum wage?
And reduce the size of banks. You know, I want to say that was in there, but I might be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was just against some banks and some dudes who are the 1%. That's what I thought.
Well, broadly speaking, right, they were against rising income inequality. So I'm hoping maybe to my own detriment that there was some more positive language in there, in addition to like controls aimed at targeting banks or sources of the rich. Yeah, exactly. There might have been something also about empowering the rest of us.
Yeah. There's always like there's a huge hate for the rich, instead a huge love for the poor.
You know, I had a sociology professor once who tried to explain it. He's like, America's amazing because we simultaneously hate the rich and love the rich like nobody else.
The rich that represent
you want
American
to score votes
and fuck the rich.
Exactly. Like, you should hate the rich all the time if you want to score votes, unless you made yourself rich and then everyone respects you. Or, like, if your cousin's rich, you're like, oh, he did something right. Like,
well, that was 2008.
Really funny.
That was 2008, and yep. Still my always like pragmatic sign. I don't know what I say. Omarism solutions for everything are so far.
I'm an Omarist. That's fine.
Yeah, are so far removed from economics that it wouldn't make any sense. Like when you say redistribution of wealth, what I think is poor people should have less kids, and rich people should have more kids, and that way in 30 years we solve poverty. Done. Like I think of shit like that, and I didn't get like anyone saying that won't work. Why? Because let's enforce like, okay, if you're irresponsible, you're renting, you don't have an apartment, don't have a lot of kids. Okay, that's against the rights of anyone having kids, of course, and blah blah blah. But it would actually work, right?
It's a very mathematical solution to household income is to just increase the size of wealthy households.
In 30 years, it will have a redistributed wealth. There wouldn't be that much poor people if they didn't give birth to more poor people. Done.
Yeah. I mean, I'm surely you can think though about like the huge gap between the top 1% of earners and the bottom.
Oh yeah, the 1% needs to be a 2%, then a 10% first. I know what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, even if you divided that one by like 100 kids, you know, it still would probably get nowhere near where you need it.
By the way, speaking of that, like, because here there's a huge poverty and there is no social net. So if two guys, there is no gay marriage. If there is a couple who's giving like birth to 5 kids, 6 kids, 7 kids, I am against them because they're irresponsible, and I am against the suffering of human beings. Fuck your need to have kids. Fuck your rights to have kids. I'm more interested about, like, I'm pro them not having kids. So that got to a hilarious interaction between me and American, because he was saying during a group call, of course we're all pro-choice here. And I said, why did you assume I'm always pro-choice? And he was like, instantly, you sexist asshole, like you're pro-life. And I said, no, I'm not even pro-life. I'm sometimes pro-abortion. Like, my position is sometimes I'm against the woman's right to choose, pro-abortion, not the other way around. Like, you got me totally wrong, dude. If you're poor and you don't have money.
What is contraceptive access like in Egypt, out of curiosity? Like, can you get birth control
Out of curiosity, condoms, and there is no, and a contra plan is a morning after, but there is no such thing as something you take if you passed like 3-4 days. Done.
Are condoms like illegal? This is like a stupid question, but could you get condoms if you were in like Upper Egypt or somewhere that's more remote?
Yeah,
like, I mean,
probably if you go to a pharmacy, but Upper Egypt it would be much worse, and contraplan wouldn't even exist then. But in all pharmacies, like the only birth control is pre-sex. But there is no such thing as something you can take. There is always illegal shit like medications for asthma and heart disease that has a side effect of abortion. You know that shit? like extremely harmful, dangerous shit. That
I'm gonna guess there's not a lot of primary care providers sitting down with teenage girls having that conversation.
What do you think, Andrew?
I think
primary care. Look at me, American. Jesus fucking Christ. Do they think they even know? Dude, there's a fucking doctor in Al-Azhar who thinks STDs only travel pre-marriage. Once you're married, you can't have STDs because Allah wills STDs.
You know, it's amazing. I wonder, I don't know where the hell, in the 1980s in the US where people were at with that, but I know that there was plenty of conservative politicians who said things like, you know, HIV is punishment for the gay lifestyle. I think it's people who like won elections. I mean, we look at it now, like how the hell could anyone in America say that? But a long ago.
Yeah. We're at your state in the 70s, but add to that, we don't have separation of church and state. Done.
All right.
Now you know how shitty everything is. Done. That's 2008. I'm gonna ask another thing. What the hell is the debt ceiling, and how can the government be shut down?
Yeah, I ran out of time. I was going to actually look up more of the history of the debt ceiling. But crudely speaking, the debt ceiling is when the government, you have to vote from the Congress to agree to allow the federal government to borrow more money. But the thing is, when they pass the budget...
Borrow more money from where?
Oh, from wherever it is they borrow it. Print more or get more from the Federal Reserve.
Oh, Federal Reserve.
Or, you know,
I thought,
yeah, I mean,
sorry for interrupting you because I don't understand, but I thought the Federal Reserve is already in the hands of the government totally. There's no limit. They can take whatever they want.
Oh, my God.
Right?
It's a really obvious question I should know the answer to. But I believe the Federal Reserve is sort of a very close partnership. It's not necessarily under the control of the U.S. It's just the largest
Federal
bank.
Reserve is not the same as the federal government?
There's appointed membership, but there's really close ties to the private sector. To me, it feels more like a gray area. I'm sure there's a more nuanced answer that explains what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
But in general,
the debt ceiling is the amount of money we can spend this year. We can borrow to spend on America this year.
Yeah, but it never used to be a huge problem. It's become a political bargaining tool, essentially, because the budget used to get passed. And if they pass the budget, then we all kind of know that presumably Congress is on the same page about spending this much money.
Because they're the ones who passed the budget in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
How can you pass a budget that surpasses a limit that you're against?
Right. But if you're a Republican or if you're a Democrat now, but you basically always ran on spending less money and being tough on government waste. And so you have this excellent opportunity to draw out these negotiations on the debt ceiling to basically leverage your role for getting additional votes on whatever you want.
Here is what I understood. There is no such thing as a debt ceiling, but there is such a thing as people in Congress who wants to lower the budget, so they pretend that there is such a thing as a debt ceiling to either use it politically to their base or lower the budget.
Well, there is such a thing as a debt ceiling because there really is a limit. And they do have to, but see, they could vote to raise the limit and not talk about this again for 10 years.
That's why I said it's not real.
Yeah, okay. I mean, if they, so.
I know, I'm not arguing. I don't understand. I'm asking.
Yeah, I'm trying to explain better. There really was a government shutdown a couple of years ago.
That's, yeah, I remember it.
Maybe I want to say 13 or 14. I don't remember. I remember because I was working for people who got federal government money, and they, they had to not go to work for a day or something.
Sorry, keep on.
So it's if they don't actually approve it and not able to borrow more money, they really will stop doing work. It really is a thing, but pointless gesture. I mean, it should be something that is only revisited rarely from a really practical point of view. But for example, the Democrats recently voted to have to revisit it. I think very, very recent, like maybe in 3 months or something like that. And it's because they want to have this debate again. They want to screw over Republicans as they're coming over for their midterm elections.
Fuck the two-party system. Seriously, what are you guys doing to each other? What? Like, how like bipartisan can the budget and a hurricane and Islamic terrorism and these things? How the hell did they get politicized in the first? Okay, let's not get into that. Done.
I imagine you know the answer, but it sucks.
Yeah, it sucks. It really sucks. It really sucks. The budget itself, okay? The budget is split into a lot of things going to a lot of different places, and the major chunk is the defense budget, which everyone wants to.
That is not
the
correct.
Major chunk is not okay.
The major chunk of the discretionary budget is the defense budget, but the
what
largest
is the discretionary budget?
So there is mandatory spending, where the Congress has to allocate a certain amount of money to certain services.
These are the musts.
The musts, exactly. There's no discretion that Congress can have over that unless they passed a law to change what the mandatory provisions were. And then there's the discretionary budget, which when they plan the budget, they can make adjustments. And so the largest point of the discretionary budget, which is really the only thing that is debated politically, is defense spending. And then the largest part of the entire budget is, I want to say, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. If you lump them all together,
wait. So you're saying Medicare, Medicaid, and all the health stuff is in the musts, in the mandatory shit, right?
Yeah, Medicaid might not be in there. I don't.
But if they are in the mandatory shit, sure. How the hell are they politicized and argued over?
Oh, because
they're already in the what?
Because you could make cuts to them, right? So they're in the must from a budget, but if Congress passed,
didn't you just say they're a must? The mandatory can be cut, also.
If you pass a law, which is not easy.
Oh yeah, so it's just harder to cut. It's semi-mandatory, harder to cut shit.
Yeah, it would require a lot more work.
But the defense budget is outside that. That's why it's getting
allocated every year. Yes, and it's a huge. I mean, it's a huge portion of the budget. So it's just because it's not the largest doesn't mean it's not have ever many billions of dollars or whatever it is. But
can I ask a really stupid question?
Go for it.
Now, it's a chicken and egg question. What comes first? Here is the money that we have for a budget. Let's split them. Or here is what we need. Let's borrow money to split them over.
Neither. The answer is messier and more unfortunate.
Okay. I'm asking because if there was a certain number they have to work with and start splitting, they'll do the musts first. They'll cut defense this and they'll do that because they have an actual number. But if they can always increase the number by borrowing more, then the whole splitting thing is just pointless, and let's owe money to China forever and done.
Yeah. So there is the wonderful people of, is the Congressional Budget Office involved here? Probably, maybe. I don't know. They're like the most alienated dorks of all U.S.
Wait,
politics.
who? I didn't get your first.
The Congressional Budget Office. They're the people who come up with the score for estimated changes in revenue every time an act gets passed, and you'll hear about them all the time. They're one of those people
guys who bring up the number.
They're kind of like scientists. Like people hate them if they're not on the same side as them, and people love them, and they're an untouchable institution if they're on your side. But,
what do they do exactly again? Plain.
So they I don't know if they make it for all the federal budget, but let's, for intents and purposes, say they do. They make estimates for how much money is going to come in and how much stuff is going to cost. And they're generally the resource for this. There's not necessarily a hard number to start from every single year, but they have like a pretty good estimate.
So they're dictating that number as an estimation every year? Yes. Because there is politicians and congressmen telling them we need this, and this, right?
Well, and every single massive cabinet agency, or when including the military, including all the health services providers and so on.
Oh, not just politicians. I know.
I'm so saying, the budget is going to be the previous year plus and so on.
I'm saying the Department of Assholes. The Department of Assholes is to have people come to them. We need all of this. Please estimate how much this shit would cost, right?
Yes.
And their estimation becomes reality.
Most of the time.
Okay.
Or at least it's treated as such. I mean, sometimes they're pretty far off. They're pretty far off with some of the Obamacare predictions, but
because
they're very.
Obama lied and said you can choose your own doctor. Obama lied, and premiums are getting up. See how I know things from media that I don't understand?
I'm so impressed.
Like, yeah, I have no idea how the premiums went up. Who knows why? But I know that they went up. Like, bad. Premiums going up bad.
It's actually
that's my
really,
view on economics.
It's unfortunate. Oh man, I could go further into that. I won't because it's boring. But
no.
It's really,
actually, okay, economics is boring. That's why I got you on in the first place. This episode
exactly.
is called boring.
It's a sad irony. This wouldn't fix all of the areas of rates going up by any stretch of imagination, but it would help a lot. And originally when the ACA was passed, it required that the public insurance, Medicaid in the United States, be expanded. In some cases, at least for some income brackets and individuals.
Repeat that last part because you were cutting off. Repeat that last part.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So it required that Medicaid, which is the public insurance for non-elderly individuals in the United States, be expanded. And that would, in some cases, I want to say almost double the income cutoff for some individuals. So it would have been almost like a de facto public option. The idea being this could compete against areas where there's only a single private market, or it would be at least a safety net for some people there. And states then challenged this in law, and ultimately the Supreme Court struck it down and made it so states could elect to expand this or not, and a lot of states chose not to, particularly more conservative states, particularly states where we see much higher rate hikes.
So you're basically like a true liberal blaming the Republicans for it.
Well, I'm being a capitalist here. Like, I'm saying the places that chose not to expand the market are seeing exactly what you would expect to have happen in a limited market, where there's only one provider in areas they're charging more money. And they could have had another provider, one that wasn't economically feasible, and that's because it was a public provider.
More options.
Like some straight Adam Smith shit.
Yeah,
and when you have an option that isn't profitable, the government should take it on.
Well, at least Omar in Egypt knows that monopoly is bad. Okay. Speaking of monopoly is bad, jumping to another point. Since I know monopoly is bad, and also government taking over or controlling or extremely regulating a private company is also bad. Now, what do you think of a situation like Google is by facto a monopoly because everyone else failed? But at the same time, it shouldn't be regulated because it's a private company, right?
We're talking like, Bing still exists. I know that no one says, let me Bing that. No, but it still exists. Like, they continue. It's the default search engine on most Windows phones. They're still going to be able to mine your data that way.
Okay, you know what
collects information.
Okay. You know what Internet Explorer and Bing are used for, right?
Downloading
Chrome. To write in the word Chrome. That's all its use in existence. Okay, I'm asking because if Google is so powerful and it can do whatever it wants, no matter what the cost to anyone, because it's a private business, right? There can't be.
No, okay.
Okay, there can't be the government interfering in Google's business. You agree on that? That it just can't happen.
I think they should interfere at the point where they did something unethical. We probably agree.
Unethical? A company doing something unethical? No.
I know. Shut. But
an entity that drives to make more money can go in paths that are unethical. Dude, shit.
God.
Okay, but in Google's case, their motto and slogan is "Do no evil," because that's why they're no evil. I'm asking. Asking because the slogan of Google is "Do no evil." I'm not even kidding. Google it. Did I just say Google it?
That's all I heard was Bing it. I'm sorry.
Oh my God. Okay, Andrew. Hypothetical, if Google is not a good example, a company that totally won over all other companies in like rebar construction steel. Zero competition, and all the competition just left because there is no way to get up against that giant. It's still private. Now what do we do? It can raise prices with nothing. It's their own choice. What should be done?
Yeah, so the microeconomist, 102 response to this is actually you should break up a monopoly because in the end, puts firms in a place where they're not as profitable as they could be. I mean, they could try to extort prices, but ultimately, if they put the price above the highest social utility, then people are probably going to purchase less.
Extort prices, as in, as in they could company to lower their prices,
or I mean, that's one option.
That can be legal. That can be legal. That can't be legal.
That can be legal. You can absolutely put in rate control. But
what the fuck is capitalism is for then?
Pass a law. Well, if there's only one provider, it's not really capitalism, is it? If there's no competition.
Okay, but involved. I mean, that's not my point. I mean, the laws that existed when there was competition, they suddenly disappear once it's a monopoly.
So here's an example. Most energy providers in the United States are private firms, but they're contracted with the government. And so they're the only provider. And that's because in the end, it's way more efficient to only have one set of power infrastructure. And so it would be ridiculous to try to have multiple providers.
Yeah, it's ridiculous to have competition infrastructure, because let's make this like sewage systems against your sewage.
It's silly.
Like,
yeah,
exactly. Stupid. But okay, you're talking to someone where anything as critical as infrastructure is government based anyways, not private.
Well, this is America, so.
Okay, sorry, my dude. Sorry, my man.
but like the way that this works is completely horrible.
Private companies, but it's still the government subcontracting private companies to make them shit.
But most importantly, when they contract it, they determine the rate that the company can charge, or they give a flexible schedule of rates, for example. But the point is that the company
no, wait,
to extort whatever price they want.
Wait, the company doesn't even give rates. It just built the infrastructure and went home to sleep. It takes nothing out of this. Oh, no. There is no such thing as rates.
No, they still
the government takes rates.
No, not in the U.S. At least not all the time.
They charge. So your electricity bills is going to private companies, not the government.
Most of the time.
Mind blown. Hashtag mind blown.
It annoys people to no end here, but there is very little evidence that you'd say.
Oh, trust me, as if the guys where the government is the monopoly are so happy.
Or as if I'm sure they're doing the best job, right? Like it's what would be odds?
They're not doing the best job. You've seen it firsthand.
Do you get more blackouts than LA or less? That will be the real question.
Well, the blackouts happened after Morsi, and they stopped because Sisi wanted people to love him.
Oh, that was nice.
No, it was nice. And he took out the social things later on petrol and benzene, which raised oil the gas prices.
Okay.
So he pissed off people later. No, it's all political. Okay, that's my thing here. It was in the middle of the Brotherhood Sisi fight. So let's spend more money to make people love me now. And when the Brotherhood doesn't exist anymore, make him hate me, no problem. There's no opposition.
Yeah.
It's politics,
Sisi is a government power.
Same. Let's think of it. Dude, if we're gonna talk Egypt, it's totally different to the point that there is two Egypts. There is an extremely rich Egypt, which is the Egyptian military, and extremely poor Egypt, which is the Egyptian government. There is two countries in the same place. They don't mingle.
I noticed
the Egyptian military does.
Cairo. It's crazy. You'd see like these suburbs that look like they could be in LA with the manicured yard and shit. And then you'd see, like 40-story high-rise building halfway built.
Let me tell you about Egypt. You said only in America. Let me tell you about only in Egypt. This shit doesn't exist in any other country on this planet. The military is responsible for bread, infrastructure, highways, electricity. The military, not the government. Not the government, the institution of the military.
Right.
It doesn't like defend borders and wars and stuff. It's a company.
Things for some reason.
Yeah, it's like the military engineering corps, the military what the military. These are like institutions within the military, which are the richest among Egypt, and meanwhile, when the government fails, the military bails the government out, not because the government is too big to fail, because the government is the only thing, so it can fail. Like it's like not too big. Like there is nothing else. The country wouldn't exist, so it has to bail them out. So every time the government tries to
it's too big to not exist.
It's too big to exist, non-existent. So every time the government tries to do programs or something related to education, and it fails, and there is a budget issues, the military comes with a huge influx of money for the government to raise it up, and the military says, you can't handle this shit, we'll make it from now on, therefore they'll have more power, and a continuous loop.
Dear fucking God.
No, you didn't know about this?
I did, but every time I hear it from your mouth, it just gets worse. It's just
there is no such thing as a competition with the military, because the military has something not a single company can have, which is infinite free labor.
Oh, we haven't had that in America.
There is no such thing as salaries and paychecks as other companies in the private sector. They have an influx of young Egyptians mandatory to work for them for 3 years or more. Done.
And they
you guys go build it.
How do you... Man.
Okay, they have like
you
basic
got paid nothing in your
No, okay, they have basic paycheck, but when compared to an engineer in a private company, he wouldn't deal with that shit and he would leave the company in a second. But he can't leave. Like, okay, here's what you don't understand. Like, let's say $1,500 Egyptian pounds, which is like $100. That's every month for someone in the military. $100. That's less than minimum wage, right? Like that's that's 1,200 a year.
Man. Let me put like in perspective. My rent in Seattle is like $700 a month.
Rub it in, dude. I want you to rub it in. Just ram it in there up my ass. So here's the funny part. The funny part is you have like a draft, or it's not a draft. There is no or, but it's mandatory. So you work for this. You're doing this for 3 years. That's an order, not a job opportunity. You know the difference, right?
Yeah.
It's a job opportunity.
Right.
People would work for a company that have a higher paycheck, but it's not. It's you're doing. We have to do this for 3 years, then we'll get out of the military and we'll do something else. So they have free labor, and no one else can compete with the military. Done. And
amazing. What happens when you don't have to pay people?
It's dude. And when you don't have to pay people, the institution itself revolves around systems which promotes people doing shit, not automation or any innovation doing shit. Like, there is a guy who just stamps the first papers. There's another guy who does the papers from this drawer to this drawer. There's a third guy who just opens the door. There's a seventh and eighth guy who just... We can have unlimited people. Why the hell should we like try to maximize or minimalize labor to make the same product? It's irrelevant in the equation. Let's just have 100 people in that building doing things a private company can do with 3 people. Done. Whatever. Yeah. Who cares? And by the way, there is like sometimes they have an overflow of people, so they have to give them shit to do. It's not like they need them. It's weird. Oh dude, God. Trust me. Like, oh my God. You haven't heard half of it. And you know what the worst part is?
Stamper.
No. What? You know what the worst part is? The worst part is that they became too powerful to the point that private companies and public, of course, I'm talking about the government here, not the military, are so shitty to the point that the right thing to do is, shit, okay, military, come, this bridge is yours. We can't just do it. Like, it's not even, like, some serious trouble happens when the fucking government is responsible for a simple tunnel under the ring road you saw. Like, remember there was a tunnel under it. They were starting to do it. They fucked up, and the army came and finished it in 1 month because they have unlimited power.
Right, can work 24 hours a day.
Yeah, not the same people. You can have 2-hour shifts for 1,000, no problem.
Right.
Yeah, you keep forgetting the unlimited number of people. Dude, think of like your Stalin and Stalingrad is being attacked. Just send unlimited number of people. That's the basic mentality here. Like
it's like the Futurama episode. I will throw wave after wave of my own men at your disposal.
So if you're interested in the tunnel being done, you have to go to the military in the first place. That's the main problem. So there's a little free market going around between the private companies for normal buildings, a tourism spa in where, but whenever something, either private or the military wins by default. It's good that there is at least a free market of trivial shit we can build, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like at least there's an job opportunity. Like New Cairo, Tajamma, whatever the new places around Cairo are being built, at least those are private. But if it's just something infrastructure related or highway related or bridge or whatever, done military.
Man,
why even consider a private company?
No problem.
That's not what we have to do in America.
America. Fuck yeah. Coming again.
Fuck yeah.
Do that.
the video you shared when Trump won.
Yep.
No vodka in the world will be like your status was like, are you okay?
It was like the apocalypse had hit my entire house. My roommate was rolling on the floor in his own vomit, complaining about how we voted for Jill Stein. Wow. It was dark times.
Jill Stein, okay. And
all right, I should probably get going pretty soon.
Yeah. Same here. I was gonna finish it. And thank you, dude, for coming. And anytime we'll do this again, if I get more knowledgeable about fucking economics and read your books. Even if they're boring, I need to understand the shit. Like, you've seen me, like, maybe poor people should have redistribution of wealth. Like, that's how I think.
Maybe, like, pick a specific topic. I could find some better reading. It is. I mean, you could divide household by a larger number, but...
And you find more topics and tell me, just to do economics 101, please. And I was going to ask you, like, do you owe China money? Is that okay? Can they ask for it? Like shit like that.
No, it's
like global market
yes,
shit.
But it really doesn't matter.
How is that? Okay, before we close this, 3 minutes on that, please. Before we close it, please. Sorry.
Sure. I hate to shoot myself in the foot because this is the sort of thing where I should like look up the specific numbers before I start pulling stuff out of my ass.
Shoot yourself in the foot, dude.
But my understanding is that, we sell government bonds and anyone can buy them, and a certain number of those can be held by foreign countries or people in foreign countries. And I want to say whatever the large National Bank of China is holds a considerable amount of those, but it's a very small percentage overall. And the fear, of course, right, is that they could call that debt due and cash in their bonds instead of making the profitable return. And then they would...
them from doing that?
Well, it's a bad economic decision because they would lose money, or at least they would lose future earnings doing that. But even if they did, we could find a way to pay for it.
From an economic standpoint, they would lose money, but if there is something political, say you push them too hard to stop
yeah, but in the scheme of things, it's not really that much money. Like we could
yeah, it's not that much money. I thought there was a huge number to China or something. Like I thought that's a big deal.
People it sounds like a large number because it's a lot of money, but the American economy is huge, so it's not percent-wise that large. I think the bigger fear and the only realistic thing to be concerned about that is that if we keep issuing bonds like this and our mandatory spending is going to continue to rise as the population continues to age and, accrue more expensive healthcare services, then the rating of these bonds could go down and then people might call them in and then we might not be able to issue more and then it's a whole thing.
But dude, by then automation would have taken over and none of this would make any sense. Right?
Well, I mean, probably not. No. Then the real thing that would It's an easy solution, practically speaking. It's an almost impossible political solution. What you need to do is raise revenue, which means you have to raise taxes. Which means you have to raise taxes in America, which is not easy.
Yeah, tell that we have to raise taxes. Dude, thank you so much.
Yeah, that goes over so well.
And there's a lot of shit to talk about, and I will get you fucking again, okay, Andrew?
You're goddamn right you will. I'm sorry it took so long this time. We will fucking do this.
You guys should come back to fucking Egypt. Like, you have a place here, okay?
I want to. I'm hoping next summer we can figure out a way to do that.
Okay, figure it out. Come again, and I will argue with you more over here. Face to face. Fuck you. يلا اندرو حبيبي.
Hasn't been fair. You've had cigarettes. حبيبي سنة طيبة.
سلام يا باشا.